Hello, and welcome to Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Today I'm going to read from A Taste of Evil, part of the Hanny's Daughter Mystery Series by N.L. Holmes. Chapter 1. Neferet, Ben-Ib, and their apprentice physician Mut-tuy arrived at the home of Neferet's parents to join them for dinner, as they frequently did, Brute the mastiff padding at their side. Neferet always found comfort in leaving the chilly elegance of her husband's household for the cosy disarray of the parental home, where she and her 4 brothers and sisters had passed the happiest of childhoods. "Ladies," Papa greeted them warmly, a smile stretching his square-jowled face as they entered the salon. "How is the healing business these days? Staying busy?" "It's fine. Too fine. Far too many people sick or injured." Neferet slipped onto the stool that faced her father at his little table. "How is it we ever complained about not having enough patients?" The woman of her heart and her fellow doctor, Ben-Ib, dragged up 2 more stools and took a seat facing Neferet's grandfather. "Fortunately, there was nothing too serious today, Lord Hanny." "Anything news around here? Do things seem boring since we ended the crime ring that was terrorizing the city?" As she cited their accomplishment with a casual air, Neferet grinned at her father, who had played a role in their adventure only half a year earlier. "Listen to the girl," said grandfather, shaking his head with mock seriousness. "Just saving people's lives every day is no longer exciting enough for her. Now she has to risk her own life and brave criminals to feel any thrill." "No, grandfather, I was talking about Papa." Of course her grandfather knew very well what she'd meant, and she knew that he knew. They all laughed. "That was so dangerous. Thanks be to all the great ones that you weren't injured," her sister Bakut Iset said from her couch next to Papa. Bakut had been left paralyzed from an injury many years ago, and it hadn't been an accident. For the first time, Neferet wondered if the incident had been what had made her so determined to solve crimes and see their perpetrators punished. It had certainly been the germ of her interest in medicine. "Where's Mama?" Neferet asked. "Surely she's not still at the temple. They don't have liturgies at night, do they? Why else would the chantresses be needed?" Papa and grandfather gave each other a meaningful look. "She's in the kitchen," said Papa, "making our dinner." Neferet hooted in surprise. "Why is she making it? Where's Cook?" "She didn't come in today. Her husband just died," Papa said in a lower voice, as if Cook might be listening. The 3 young women made noises of sorrow. "We should go pay our respects," Neferet said. "We all did earlier today," said grandfather. "She's been with us a long time. She's practically like one of the family. Your father is helping them with the funeral too." "That's very nice, Papa. Maybe Mama would like some help herself." Neferet rose and started toward the door. "Maybe yes, maybe no," Papa said, with a chuckle. "She chased me out of the kitchen a little while ago." "Yes, but we're going to help. Come on, people." Ben-Ib and Mut-tuy popped up and trailed her into the kitchen, a kind of nook under an overhanging reed shelter that covered half the small interior court. Mama was squatting beside the hearth, a wooden spoon lifted to her mouth, tasting something in a big pot as they entered. Her hair was curling sweatily across her brow, but otherwise she seemed to be mistress of the situation. "Girls," she cried, "taste this and see what it needs." They each took a sip from the spoon. Neferet decided the lentils and pork were perfect, shiny with fat and perfumed by onions and garlic, and no one disagreed. "Papa told us about Cook's husband. That's such a shame." "Did he tell you Int-F was poisoned?" Mama asked, rising to her feet. "Cook and her family think it was murder." Neferet stopped suddenly, as if a goose had nipped her. "Murder, did you say?" Behind her mother she saw Mut-twy's eyes grow round. "Yes, my dearest, and cook is obviously hoping you ladies and Hanny will find out who did it." Mamma wrapped a towel around the pot and lifted it from its tripod over the fire. "Open the door for me, will you, Benarib?" He sailed through the open doorway and into the salon, holding the pot out before her, the 3 young Sunettes trailing after like acolytes. "That smells sumptuous, my dove." Papa sniffed the steam rising from the pot as his wife set it down on the table. "I think you could give cook lessons." No. She's excellent at what she does. I do have a few family tricks, though. My grandmother knew a lot about the kitchen." Neferet suspected Mamma's blue-blooded grandmother had never cooked a stew in her life, no matter how many tricks she knew. But neither had Mamma, yet she was perfectly capable of supervising any procedure, from skinning game to confecting delicious dishes. She often said it was all a matter of common sense. They scrambled back to their seats and waited until the mistress of the house had ladled out the lentils. "It's simple, but it should do until cook is back on the job," said Mamma, satisfied with her handiwork. "No excuse is needed, my girl," Grandfather said after a sip from his bowl. "You're ready for the royal kitchen." Mamma laughed, pleased, then jumped up again. "Oh, the bread!" But Benarib, whose reaction time was instantaneous when it came to being of service, was already on her way back outside. "I'll bring it, Lady Nubnefer." "So tell us about this murder, Papa Duck." Neferet stared at her father, excitement crackling in her fingertips. "I know less about it than your mother, but apparently when cook came in this morning to request the day off, she said that her husband, who is also a cook, had been poisoned, and although everybody acted like it was a self-inflicted accident, her family believes someone did him in. Do I have that all correct, my love?" "Why does she think it was murder?" Neferet asked, more and more interested. "He suddenly became very sick and felt like his mouth and throat and stomach were on fire. Then it progressed to other symptoms I won't describe at the dinner table. The next day he was gone." Mamma reached out to Benarib, who proffered the big round loaf she had brought from the kitchen. "Thank you, dear one." "That does sound like poisoning of some sort. Isn't it possible he poisoned himself by accident? He was a cook, after all. Maybe he collected the wrong herb." Neferet tore off a chunk of bread and passed the loaf to her father. Mamma lifted her shoulders in a graceful shrug. "I'm sure it's possible and maybe likely, but cook doesn't think so." "Did her husband have any enemies, rivals?" asked Benarib. "I don't know any more than that, my love. Perhaps you should talk to cook and get more details from her." Papa nodded, his mouth full. But Neferet said, "The 3 of us will go this evening to pay our respects, and then we'll see what else cook can tell us." "I can't believe I'm actually encouraging you to get involved in another murder case," said Mamma. "But cook will be so grateful. She's still talking about how you solved the murder of her sister's employer." "The florist," Mut-twy murmured, her face lighting up. That had been the first of their cases, and Cook's sister had provided an important witness. They chatted about many things as they ate, and by the time they finished, the long orange rays of autumn sun through the high windows were fluttery with the shadows of trees. As she finally pushed back her plate of discarded fig stems, Neferet said brightly, "Well, troops, let's be off. Where does cook live, Mamma?" "Hers is one of those small houses attached to our garden wall on the eastern side. Papa can show you where. All right, Hanny?" "Of course, my dove." He rose, still eating a fig, and to the doorway. "We shouldn't be too long." It only took a few minutes to reach the modest home, part of a wasp's nest of mud brick dwellings that had been patched onto the outside walls over the years to accommodate the people attached to the great houses around them. The gates stood open, and keening could be heard from within. Lit lamps revealed a crowd of friends and family come to commiserate with the Osir's widow. Cook sat on the beaten earth floor, surrounded by her adult children, their faces tear-streaked and dusty. Her big breasts sagged at the unhitched top of her shift, and she clawed at her cheeks from time to time, although the short-cut nails didn't do much damage. Her swimming eyes brightened at the sight of her employer and the young woman. "Lord Hanny, Lady Neferet, thank you for coming. These are my children." The gaggle of youngish men and women all nodded respectfully. They were large, substantial people, like their mother. "The girls wanted to bring you their profoundest condolences," said Papa, in his deep, comforting voice. "Cook, Mama told us that your husband may have been poisoned." Neferet spoke under her breath, careful to not let the other guests milling in the tiny salon hear her. Cook's eyes grew wide and glittered uneasily. She cast a surreptitious glance over her shoulder. "That's what the children thought, little mistress, but the great folks at the house where he worked don't want to hear it. They think he just put something bad into the date paste by mistake. They threw the whole potful out after I told them what happened. Maybe they're right after all. They probably are." "Amit take it," thought Neferet in disappointment. "We might have found whatever the poison was in the paste if they hadn't thrown it out." "Do you mind if we step somewhere more private for a minute? I'd like to ask some questions, get a better sense of what happened," she said, laying a hand of solidarity on Cook's shoulder. The woman hauled herself to her feet while her children stared at her. She explained loudly, "Lady Neferet's going to help us, like she did Auntie's master. Keep greeting the visitors, loves." Cook lumbered through the salon, ushering Papa and the woman behind her. They passed through a door hung with a mat and entered a tiny courtyard lit only by the full moon rising over the treetops. A domed mud oven still radiated warmth and the scent of baking meat. "What can I tell you, Lady Neferet? He came home early 2 days ago, saying his mouth and throat hurt, and before much longer it was the stomach too, and then bloody diarrhea. He couldn't hold food nor even water. By the next day poor Int F was gone." Tears began to bubble up, and the woman mopped at her eyes. It were a terrible death. Neferet grimaced. "It sounds like it. Did his lips turn blue or anything? Were his stools green? Did he have hallucinations?" "No, but he was in pain, like he was burning inside. Weren't nothing I could do." "Did you think to call a doctor?" asked Benarib in her gentle voice. "It might help us to hear somebody's diagnosis." "No, Lady Benarib, I didn't. I keep forgetting you girls is Sunnets, and otherwise it's too expensive to think about. Oh, now I feel bad." "Don't," Papa said kindly. "There wasn't anything anybody could have done." But Cook had added a sense of guilt to her grief, and she began to blubber great wet sobs, pressing her hands to her face. "We've been married 35 years, and he was just gone, like that." Neferet, for whom Cook had been like family as far back as she could remember, threw her arms around the woman and hugged her tight. They stood that way for a while. Cook wept inconsolably until finally, hiccuping, she got hold of herself, and Neferet stepped back. "We'll find out if he was poisoned on purpose by somebody, and who that somebody was," she promised grimly, "and we'll bring them to justice. We can't bring Intef back, but Ma'at will be done, I swear. May the Lady of Truth tie a knot in my nose if it isn't so. May hippopotamuses trample me, and may green fur sprout on my elbows, and—" "Oh, thank you, Lady Neferet. I knew you'd do something. I told the children that if anybody could help us, it was you and your friends and Lord Hanny here. You find out who killed my Intef, and I'll bake you the biggest honey cake anybody ever seen." That was a powerful motivator. Cook's honey cakes, featured on New Year's Day, were legendary. We may have more questions for you, but we need to ponder things first. If there's anything at all you can think of that might help us, be sure to tell us, all right? Like, did he have rivals or enemies at all? Cook's face froze in what Neferet interpreted as uncertainty. Enemies? Never. And F was a good man. People liked him, admired him, even the fancy families he worked for over the years. Rivals? I guess it's possible, but his kitchen mates could tell you better than me. What household did he work for? We'll want to interview the kitchen staff for sure. For the vizier, Lady Neferet, said Cook proudly, Lord Pentu himself.